I felt this pain for so long.
Maria.
Of all the things I hate about modern Hollywood, villain sob stories are right at the very top of a very long list. You know how it goes. This guy is a mass murderer, but his mommy was mean to him, so it's all right. It's not really his fault. It's society's fault for failing him. Please, feel sorry for him. I can't emphasize just how much I hate this kind of thing. But then you get a villain like Shadow. Shadow is a bad guy who does bad things for bad reasons that he thinks are good. This is not that different from most villains. What sets Shadow apart is that his journey through the darkness eventually leads him to the light. He is actually the first redeemable villain I have liked since Jaime Lannister. So what's the secret? Because there is a very fine line between creating a redeemable villain and just making excuses for evil, which is what most Hollywood writers do these days. The writers of Sonic 3 did not make that mistake with Shadow. To make Shadow a redeemable villain, they had to do 4 important things. First, the right motivations. For a villain to be redeemable, he needs a somewhat selfless motive.
I want revenge.
You could argue that revenge is kinda selfish because it only gratifies the person exacting vengeance, but Shadow isn't approaching it from a selfish perspective. He's not pursuing vengeance to gratify his ego. He's doing it to repay a debt and balance the scales of justice.
Shadow's story began a lot like yours, Sonic. But where you found family and friends on this planet, Shadow found only pain and loss.
There is only one thing that drives Shadow, animates him, and consumes his soul.
Maria.
Maria was his best friend, his only friend. Shadow crashed to Earth in a meteorite. He spent his life locked up in a lab being studied. Maria is the only person who saw any humanity in Shadow. She was the only person who didn't view him as a dangerous alien. Maria was literally the only person in the whole world who cared about Shadow or treated him with any amount of fondness. He doesn't know anything about the planet he came from, and he has never known anyone else on Earth who viewed him as anything more than a dangerous curiosity. Only Maria. Before Maria, Shadow spent all his free time locked up in a containment tank. He was only brought out for experiments and then stuck right back in the tank. After Maria, his life changed. He discovered joy, he discovered skating through the halls, and he discovered gazing up at the stars. Shadow experienced love, companionship, friendship, hope, and all that fun stuff. Before Maria, Shadow was a prisoner in a tank. The scientists only brought him out to stick electrodes into him and harvest his chaos energy. After Maria, Shadow is free. He's happy, his life is full of fun and games and popcorn. He actually enjoys living. Shadow's happy existence is brought to an abrupt end one day.
Hitch, we have to go now. They want to take Shadow away from us, Maria.
The "they" here is Gunn. Elements within Gunn want to take Shadow and use him for God knows what. They're prepared to do anything, including shooting literal children in the back.
Hey, what are you doing? Those are children. We've got our orders. Stand down.
The shooting punctures a tank of chaos energy. The tank explodes and kills Maria. Shadow holds her and watches her die.
Maria.
Shadow is thrown into a containment tank and frozen in place indefinitely. All he thinks about for those 50 years is Maria.
I can't get her out of my head. The pain. It's too much.
In Shadow's mind, he owes Maria. He owes her for all the goodness she brought into his life, and he owes her justice for an undeserved death.
It's almost finished, Maria. You will have justice.
Dark as it may be, it's a very selfless motivation. Shadow is not doing it for himself, he's doing it for Maria. Without this capacity for selfless action, a villain can't be redeemed. Shadow's relative selflessness is contrasted with that of his partner in revenge, Maria's grandfather, Professor Gerald Robotnik. The professor was blamed for the explosion that killed Maria and got imprisoned for 50 years. The professor is also Dr. Eggman's grandfather. Maria and Dr. Eggman are cousins, but unlike Dr. Eggman, Grandpa Robotnik wasn't always evil. When we see him with Maria and Shadow, he's an okay guy. But 50 years in a top-secret prison on trumped-up charges, plus the loss of his granddaughter and his life's work, have done a number on him. He has gone over completely to the dark side.
You're a heartless son. Rotten to the core. I'm so proud.
Professor Robotnik is the one who helped Shadow escape his containment tank. And now, with the help of Eggman, they're going to avenge Maria. Their plan requires them to steal the keys to the Eclipse Cannon, which is basically a Death Star. The professor designed it while in prison and traded it to Gunn in exchange for his freedom. Once he's free, he double-crosses Gunn, recruits his very evil grandson Dr. Eggman, and goes after the launch keys. But this is the part where the plan goes from kind of justifiable to unacceptably evil. I don't personally disapprove of a revenge in most cases, but I am a big believer in proportionality. The professor is not. He doesn't believe in an eye for an eye. He is a billion eyes for an eye kind of guy. Dr. Eggman helps because he thinks he's going to rule the world side by side with Grandpa, but the professor and Shadow have an entirely different plan.
You need to lighten up, Shadow. We're about to rule the world.
When we're done, there won't be anything left to rule.
Shadow and the professor are so consumed with revenge that there is no line they won't cross. Dr. Eggman thought he was just helping them blow up Gunn and take over the world, but their target is so much bigger.
The Eclipse Cannon is about to turn this planet into a flaming pile of rubble, wiping out everything in a 25,000-mile radius, including us.
Shadow and the professor are prepared to blow up the whole planet, everybody on it, and themselves just to avenge Maria. That's excessive, but it makes total sense to them. These are two men who have spent 50 years thinking of nothing but revenge. The professor is 110 years old. His life is over anyway, so he figures he might as well take everybody else with him and avenge his granddaughter instead of waiting for old age to do its job.
The only way to give Maria's life meaning is to destroy the world that took her from me. So I'm burning it all down!
Shadow may have a longer life ahead of him, but he has no desire to live it. Maria is the only thing he has ever cared about. He wants to avenge her. We get hints that while he supports obliterating Gunn, he's not fully on board with murdering everybody else, but the professor keeps him focused by keeping him angry.
Remember what she meant to us. Remember what they took from us.
Murdering billions to avenge one life is absurdly severe by any standard, reasonable or otherwise, but these two don't really care about anything else. Losing the only person they cared about and then spending 50 years locked up with nothing to do but think about what they would do when they get out has left them all sorts of twisted.
Don't do this. I know you're hurting, but don't let that change who you are inside.
I've spent 50 years reliving what they did to her. This is who I am inside.
Whether or not his moral compass has been warped by pain and then warped more by the professor's hatred of humanity is irrelevant by this point. What matters is that Shadow believes he's justified in doing everything he does. That makes stopping him basically impossible. You can't change the mind of somebody who believes he's right. But in order for the villain to attain redemption, he has to change everything he believes. You can't tell him he's wrong. Sonic tries that, it doesn't work. The villain has to change his mind on his own. So, how do you do it? How do you make a villain change his own mind, realize he's wrong, and atone for his sins? Shadow's turn to the light begins with a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, and eventually Shadow makes one too. While robbing Sonic and his family as they rob Gunn headquarters, Shadow knocks out Tom.
What did you do?
What I had to.
Putting Tom in a coma puts Shadow at the top of Sonic's enemies list, but it also gives Shadow a flashback. Seeing Sonic holding Tom and begging him to wake up reminds Shadow of how he did the same thing with Maria.
Please, please, please get up. Come on, please wake up.
This obviously doesn't change Shadow's mind, but the wall of righteousness Shadow has built around himself begins to crack. Doubt creeps in. Shadow sees that he's doing to other people what was done to him. If killing one innocent is wrong, how can killing another be right? The doubt bothers Shadow enough to give him second thoughts.
Professor, is this really what Maria would have wanted?
The professor extinguishes the doubt and keeps Shadow focused on the mission.
The question isn't what Maria would have wanted. It's what do they deserve?
This is not unexpected. Doubt alone is not enough. Most villains are heroes in their own stories. Shadow sees himself as an avenging angel delivering justice for his murdered best friend. To turn a villain like that, doubt is not enough. You need something stronger, something that will convince him beyond any reasonable doubt that he is not the good guy. He is not the hero. What you need is the third step of flipping a villain. Third, defeat and loss. In order to fully flip a villain, you need to beat him and beat him so decisively that he knows he's beaten. If the victory isn't decisive, the loser villain can always rationalize it away. And the only way for Sonic to decisively beat Shadow is with the Master Emerald. So, Sonic gets the Emerald, enters God mode, and beats the living crap out of Shadow.
You hurt my family. This ends now.
Now you know my anger, the pain I've felt for 50 years. And you've made the same choice I did.
About that. Beating a villain gives you victory, but it doesn't convince him he's wrong. It just convinces him that he's too weak to win. It's an important distinction. If he realizes he's wrong, he changes his mind and comes over to your side. If he still believes he's right, he just changes tactics. It's why some Confederacy stands call the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression. We beat them, but we didn't change their minds. In Shadow's case, physical defeat doesn't bother him. He was already planning to die avenging Maria. It makes no difference to him whether he dies from an explosion of the Earth or from a beatdown delivered by Sonic.
Go ahead, finish it! What are you waiting for? Do it! I'm right here!
Thankfully, Sonic is wise enough to hesitate. Shadow is urging him to finish it because he knows the professor will blow up the Earth either way, but Sonic is having a flashback, something Tom told him.
You didn't let your pain change who you are. In here.
Sonic pulls back. He realizes that if he kills Shadow, they'll be exactly the same. They're in this mess precisely because Shadow was out for revenge. If Sonic falls for the same urge to exact revenge, he's no different from Shadow. He would just be perpetuating the same cycle of disproportionate vengeance over and over again.
This is not who I am.
Sonic pulls back and Shadow is shocked.
What are you doing? You won. Take your revenge.
But Sonic doesn't want revenge. He knows better.
There are no winners with revenge.
This is what turns Shadow from villain to hero. By sparing Shadow, Sonic demonstrates that blood and vengeance aren't always the answer. There is a better way. This is the final step. Grace, forgiveness, magnanimity, or whatever else you want to call it. If Sonic kills Shadow, Shadow doesn't learn anything, and he doesn't change. But if Sonic spares Shadow before beating him decisively, Shadow just goes off and does what he planned to do anyway. Shadow has to be beaten and beaten thoroughly. If Sonic had chosen to forgive Shadow before beating him, Shadow would just have seen it as weakness. He would see it as Sonic giving up because he can't win. It's only by showing Shadow mercy at the moment when he has absolute power over him that Sonic can deliver the lesson. He has all the power to destroy Shadow, but chooses not to. The lesson lands, and Shadow becomes a new man.
I've been so blinded by rage, I thought I had no choice.
You always have a choice. Making the right one is never easy.
It's a new realization for Shadow. All this time, he thought vengeance was the only cure for pain. But vengeance doesn't cure pain or reverse loss. The pain is always going to be there. And when you engage in disproportionate vengeance, Shadow style, you just create more pain for other people.
Did your pain eventually go away?
No, but in time, I learned there's something even more powerful than pain. The love we felt for each other.
Sonic tells Shadow that all he can do is hold on to the love.
Maria might be gone, but your love will always remain.
This reminds Shadow of happier times with Maria.
The light shines, even though the star is gone.
This realization crystallizes things for Shadow. He knows what he needs to do.
We're out of time. The cannon is about to fire.
To save the Earth, Shadow pushes the Eclipse cannon away from Earth because it's too late to stop it from exploding. In making this choice, Shadow dooms himself to a certain death, but his final memories are happy ones. They're memories of Maria. He holds on to the love, saves the world, and redeems himself. That is who Shadow is, a selfless hero. If he had been selfish, if he hadn't been beaten, or if he hadn't been shown mercy and a better way, he would never have had a chance to make amends for his sins and redeem himself. The self-sacrifice at the end is just as important as the rest. The writers could have written a happy ending for Shadow, but it would only undercut the magnitude of his transformation and redemption. Shadow didn't want to walk off after the sunset and spend his days knitting sweaters on the porch. What Shadow wanted was to die avenging Maria. He didn't get that, but dying saving the world is not a bad consolation prize. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this one: the 4 words that changed Shadow's character.